Hello, dear Jake Tapper, or Mr. Clapper, I'm sorry, General Clapper, and Don Lemon. I saw you guys speaking on CNN, and I see watch CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. And when you have a whole bunch of people making opinions on these networks, where they're using names like Taliban, Al Qaeda. Oh, I'm an expert on this. See, because that needs to be used by people coordinating who's got weapons and who's killing people, because then countries have to react to that. See, we're in a mentioned trap that new countries, A1 through Z, however many countries there are, territories, locations, they would have to blame other things other than themselves for the real causes of nature demonstrating negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of how we are not bonded the way we are natural. Formally is still in collusion with that from semi-ancient times, can't defend itself, and not blame and having not enough value having been blamed on other things other than self and or on self, the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, natures. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself. So, and that can't be legalized. That was criminally legalized. So the devil, science should have long ago realized the most practical to theorize that the devil must be an archetypal criminal enterprise. And we must have, so the beginning of the Quran, for example, in the beginning of the Old Testament, have the value of sequence truth to the value of correlation, quality. See, we have the quality of countries A through Z logic abridged constitution value and roles as natures criminally legalized as criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, of sequence treatments, of defenses of that. So where and how they made the wrong outcome /S in cases, not because it's because they were both too calm and they were too nuts the wrong way. So we don't have defended the 1/3/5 identities of sequence /simultaneous nature that are, there is one identity of simultaneous nature that is everything at once. We are grouped, areas, ages, sexes, locations. The invisible but discernible is one of the things all those different things are at once. Boxings to campus dunce with stolen name /S. I tell it best. Boxings. It teaches things. See how boxing you have to grapple. I mean, you don't grapple. You can't help it, and then you have to go away. On the inside, they call it. If you with boxing, you put your hands back up. Move if you can't punch. Martial arts. It's half grappling, half striking, half wrestling. It's all three. And wrestling, all three is a little part of each of it. Independence, but independence that is also positive unto itself as a value/value progression, which is simultaneously delicate and hard because it by and as the one we are as its body of value/value progression. That's scientific value that are all, in other words, even if we break it down to where and how we are only a species, there is one identity of simultaneous nature that is as the species body. It is distinctly as the species body's parts, individually and grouped. In other words, it is distinctly as an individual. Everything is in demonstration of how one identity of volume is exception is exceptions in exception nature. For example, how it is 5 semi-natures of itself, individually grouped and together bound, all gather around. This is really why and how the notes of music are individually grouped and together, distinct identity, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Everything is in demonstration of the one identity of simultaneous nature, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to itself, as its identity of volume, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, which is part of how, where, and how this can be discerned. Not one has learned, because the breaching method, the human fact cheapening nature, slavery method, slavery of countries A through Z, no matter how powerful they get, no matter how powerful a leader can get, all locations, areas, and states of the entire volume of the human body, so Earth's ground, relationship with us, their self-value, being and having been criminally foreign influenced, and that being and having been sustained, that being and having been engineered through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, specifically not just to have things blamed on other things, others, and ourselves, what the breaching method was causing, and with nature. So nature was causing it distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and the breaching method was, / is. And not only now and then, it was not discerned. So again, being maintained, being invested, people blaming other things, others, and self. Now they're going to speak for integrity. Probably the nicest, best person at New Britain Superior Court, a woman. She was one of the ones child abused by people involved with fact cheapening nature-oriented predicate acts, by people involved with uses of interbranch and foreign, already long juxtaposed, spreading lies individually grouped and together to people with integrity. And to keep, for example, people that end up at New Britain Superior Court, a whole bunch of them, having been lied to and then having had that exploited, because they are preventing people a quality of fact cheapening nature to counter their roles criminally foreign influenced and being and having been used remotely as victim predators. Originally, so that's what witch trials are about. You don't separate what slavery was about from which witch trial was about. You use all those negatives to make. We have to make hyper algebra distinct. There's hyper algebra. You don't make positive out of negative. Identity is positive. It's an identity of relationship to positive and negative simultaneously, because we're studying this identity of simultaneous nature. Now, the beginning of the Quran says you have to agree to the name of it or not. And it says you don't have to agree with any mosque. You don't have to. If you don't feel there's something right, you don't have to pray. In other words, if you're taking that, if you can really care for the nature there, not just the value of sequence true, which again says all you have to do to be a Muslim rightly, is to agree that to call that the identity of simultaneous nature is everywhere at once, everything at once, space/existence. I would word it in English. To name it Allah. You see, sciences were criminally foreign influenced, so they were not standing. But other were sciences. That's a truth, but it was a truth being used for lie more and more. Because victim predators. Because no one fathomed someone would even contemplate or what they were trying to do and did, was get people to defend identities of and as the names of locations, areas, and states and countries. All exceptions. Defended, fact treatment nature-wise. Relevant to nature's method of demonstrating positive or negative value nature progressions in demonstration of its identity of volumes or simultaneous nature's identity of relationship to itself. Again, in the only increasing value of that. Only the extent of it is debatable. But see, offensively, the scientists in semi-ancient times, they've been with theories individually grouped and together. And they've been in defenses of theories. And the only reason they've been getting away with it is because mass rules, federal rules of evidence is crimes. Worse than war crimes. Methods bound. And methods of hiding those methods. As a whole bunch of methods individually grouped in together. As the one identity of each modern country. Itself used remotely. Their motivations used remotely. Each age of fact treatment nature's conjunction to the other ages. There are reasons why the short kids are short. I mean, little kids are short. Pay attention to things on the ground. Simultaneously. In other words, everything is in demonstration of a course long lost. Return the source. It is surging through all things in even force. Alone. So in other words, the beginning of the Old Testament is about the value of sequence true. Per the way, the people with the identity of the ground locations, all difference. See, the different locations, that's a value to what is fake. Where they have people that treat sanctions, or sanctions give up and war stays. Guns and the violence and the bombs. Because they have no, in other words, it's like slow, medium, or kill. So they have people walking around with guns. You need guns nowadays to defend a capital, but not as a front line. In other words, there's no leadership. Too, because everyone's talking about leadership and they're leaving out what's simultaneous. And they're using people's names, valuing names having been used, like charged. The theory of relativity, a theory. This is about relativity science. That identity of simultaneous nature, that is why we are a species, body of volume, distinctly from being grouped, distinctly from being individual. When any part of your body is positive to itself, its identity as a part, as a self, for example, I'm not even a doctor, it is simultaneously positive to your complete identity. And your complete identity, when it is positive to yourself, you are simultaneously positive. There are exceptions now, though. I meant per the natural course. See, now this method, too, it made so... Because of the way it uses everyone in all locations remotely, since before computers, these database organization or this database organization that is semi-preserved as the ancient republic for which we stand, America. This is a republic that was revealed by the species working together. Before scientists became criminally foreign influenced, they valued how it discerns itself. The identity of simultaneous nature, that inventions are going to work or not in relationship to it, and they're going to further be positive or not in relationship to it. A criminal insidiousness nature, like a wrongdoer, is going to use positive treatments or truth treatments as lies. They're going to use facts and fact-finding missions to cover up sequence shifts. Roles with the World Trade Center attack, for example, that Congress has, where the branches individually grouped and together are also good people, like a relative of Mr. Congressman Larson. Good person, never had a personal conversation with him. Tried to encourage me to run on the track team, which is also involved. In other words, where he was a victim too. This is where everyone's a victim, but because they're being used, the libogressions and the standing libogressions and the delusions and the screening. In other words, no one ever spoke for American patriotism. No one even spoke for how our founding parents did not have free speech. And in all exceptions in exception nature, they wanted to demonstrate, or in some demonstration the same thing. That's why they put abridged constitution, cannot be abridged. Of course it's abridged. They knew, though, we would need help. And they knew that over there constitutions are abridged too, because all locations, areas, and states had already been sustained criminally for and influenced since before modern nations. So sustained had been a quality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness natures, all needing individually grouped together, increasingly to hide the same finite active progressive lies, used remotely that way, as styles needed to pretend other in relationship to nature's nature. In other words, nature is identity's relationship to positive and negative simultaneously. And further to where there are two identities of sequence/simultaneous nature that do not fit. Where the Trinity is bound, grouped though, as those other two identities of sequence/simultaneous nature are grouped. For example, the value of sequence true before the order of the finite, and simultaneously the value of progressive value. Here now, though, you are the progressive value of that person who was in a grammar school, in a middle school, and a high school. Those grammar schools, middle schools, and high schools increasingly are tactically ulterior from the native course, which is actually why the president is named chief. See, other is foretold, because we had that face just breaching screen /S method that engineered all those motivations, natures, needs, interests, uses of them down to every location. That's why since before cars, from here to Russia, infrastructure that was employed to torture and to maintain use of the identity theft and frauds of everyone, including leaders, including Russia's leaders, America's founding leaders too. China's found. Why do you think we're not supposed to speak about Mao Zedong? They don't have the integrity to speak about yin yang. Yin yang and alpha and omega go together. Yin yang is this identity of simultaneous nature that will only stay positive unto itself no matter where it is. And concentrated distinctly here, Earth's difference in relation to the rest of space/existence. See, where that difference is going away from here, and it's self-valued. Because the self-valued part was always used. And that was always simultaneously with styles of premises treatments, sequence treatments, names treatments, perception uses, all leveraged upon. They're using misinformation for legitimate means per their roles with all these hundreds of countries, sick fakes, they're here and there. Like with psychology. In collusion with the branches of government, individually grouped together, but it is simultaneously a whole bunch of other private. Now, psychology also has roles with sociology. They brought the names. See, they want us to go after parts to understate anything. It's not just the Justice Department that is criminally foreign influence, delusions, wrought, and rules crimes, predators. All exceptions, exception nature, are in demonstration of the same thing, but we need equality of fact treatment nature. permitted to reveal them as victim predators. If we speak about them as victims, but they're already, they see it coming, how they're victim predators, and that was already used remotely. And that's so we won't, from the locations, areas, and states, will stay this quality of fact-treatment nature where we are quality and most critically as fact-treatment nature, incapable of defending the selves individually grouped together and us from what exploits that. Fluent as a method effectively undiscerned, fluent through our locations, areas, and through our nations, through the people with the most sophistication speaking for us, in collusion with the overt criminal enterprises, the most exploited people right on and off campuses, uses of identity ground locations, all exception nature, tied to the exceptions of the branches like prisons, state prison offices, state judicial branch offices. Exceptions. They have to house, they're extension of and as the branches of government, the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the political branch. See, both parties in their constituencies are the complete possession of a breaching method, as breaching screens, tools, victims, predators, per this method that is with the youngest databases and with the campuses at the university and colleges simultaneously. And it is between the public and private school because they're coordinating illusions so they look real. But it's also because of how their volume as value is, where value equals nature as value / value as nature. Or value as nature / nature as value. For example, so this is pantheism, which is science of the simultaneous. And when we come to the religions are greatly about how the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, and about how there are negative value nature progressions, action natures, and demonstration of that. So until we reveal the campus and that system of order /S, those are 5 identities of order and demonstration of that one identity of simultaneous nature as volume, and where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. Volume theory, relativity theory, critical race theory. These theories were offensively wrought in conjunction with all that too, no one having fathomed, but through needs to hide their own motivations, will use of themselves. No, the real causes. This is a long video. So this is what we have to do is play the species game. The real reason why we need embassies in modern nations is because we have to repair how and why, individually grouped and together. We use the science that brings everywhere at once evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere, especially fact, treatment, nature oriented wise. That's the only way you can do that is by harnessing that which is simultaneously more finite than anything that's ever been generated, while being with everything that is being and having been generated, and simultaneously while being greater than this. Science reveals we can. Science reveals, so we have to return from outer space. Boxing is grace. Don't fight. But there are things that are positive to say, like don't fight. There are ways to say it positive that's negative, because they're forcing a fight people enter nations and was fluent through our nations, complete possession of the opinionators, uses of words and titles in groups like Al-Qaeda and like Taliban and Afghanistan and America, uses our country's names in these games where it was our founders wanted us to demonstrate how the economy was employed by a slavery method against our founding parents, a torture method against them, a quality of fact-cheating natures qualities of fact-cheating natures that would prevent the quality of fact-cheating nature native pure as each person from free speech, to counter how they use truth for lies, while simultaneously fabricating things straight up as database relationships since before computers, then further into sciences while still before computers. And to keep that further and further collusion with what was worse than that, maintained at and uses of all locations, as uses of names, locations, every name, every group, difference. So there's a Trantolo and Trantolo recorded pretending, needing to pretend other, but consciously also. Uses of the words like family to hide lie progressions where the branches of government individually grouped too. They have crime methods that are individual and they are also grouped. So where they make subjects treatments that part with it simultaneous that they exploited away from their subjects treatments. See, they've been making subjects treatments to cover up what is actually recorded. And we are lucky to have a good person like Christine Tardet, which is probably one of the best people in that New Britain Superior Court. But she's a little girl, even though I don't know how old she is. In other words, with the rest of them, when they speak for human rights, where there's still fat roles speaking through others that are lying to them. See, those women in the Britain Superior Court grew up with men lying to them, as against that fraud roles, individually grouped and together they were lying to them. Because they had people with Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center and all that's actually tied to that. To all locations, all business function, this. So everyone can own, this is the way we're told, so you have to rely on this person and that person. And that is simultaneously need to speak as the science of the ground, that is America, which increasingly can't do that, which is the Constitution unabridged. They can't do it because they're the Constitution abridged. Self-value, in other words, relative also to where we have this, the economy having as a negative, having been employed that way, it's positive to be able to talk about that. That's where evolution comes from. That's where the science is. That's where, with the relativity to the statistics tied to problems. Oh, it's a guns problem. But it's not just guns being used. There are more bad things happening than there are streets in Hartford each year. Because there was a breaching method that was unceasing since founding, pounding drums, and everyone blaming other things, others, and ourselves, even when correctly. They were blaming what really caused and was maintaining the worst, and all the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. They were blaming it on other things, others, and then defending that. And that was setting up that formal base, which has all these people and experts about, they took jobs. They go to the schools to learn how to speak this language through teachers that already, with all these countries here, already kept each age of fact-cheating nature. They're keeping the overt criminal enterprises, the countries, our branches of government, individually grouped and together, private people, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, illusions, identity thefts, and frauds, instances, self-valued roles. With illusions, with the time, everything on and off campuses of each age and nature connected too. This is easily maintains all identities of sophistication, criminally foreign influence, and pretending other. You could discern that relative to when people answer questions about what Jim Crow laws were about, what slavery was about. That's again, don't leave out witch trials. Don't leave out how our founders had to hide their roles with the audacity. No, I shouldn't say it. With the natural longing to put the Constitution on abridged. Put that language there. They had to seek out who and what was behind that. So what they had done, they counter-engineered, counter-narratives, counter-war theater. So still a possessed, criminally foreign influenced identity of criminal enterprise, modern countries, used remotely by an archetypal criminal enterprise, fluent through our nations, individually grouped and together. Follow mandated law and have them note the exceptions, because they have, so they value, say, I've met a woman up there saying, let's go kill more people. They want us to be the first ones to kill on other people's land. They're saying, oh, the Taliban, they had all the 20 years to do it. They didn't do it because they had roles with all kinds of natures of predicate acts over here. Intercities in Connecticut, interstates with the same ones, and worse than internations. The prisons leaders on off the state prison offices in Connecticut, on off the state judicial branch offices, kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite, active, progressive lies with people from Afghanistan, victims. But see, they won't allow us to be able to speak about being victims because they make opinions about people through other people first. And it's how they use women this way. Because the women and men from young girls, they're always hearing things through other people first. And then they have to speak a different way. And men have to speak a different way. Because in other words, we have we have that trinity of difference, where everything binary used to get over on what is simultaneously actually relevant. Nothing is binary alone. Boxes. So, evolution science /S only feels like games. This is no game. These are courts that have been forging names, switching names, roles with sick things since founding, with the police forms. And it's relevant to how they're fluent with they're hiding such. They get the police forms that have the rights to hide things because of this. They have the mosques involved. They have the locations next to the news media. They have recorded remote uses of the people preventing mandated law, pretending they don't understand people. Fix the fake words with me and get them onto paper. They pretend they don't understand because they put charges on paper, but they don't put any writing, and they switch names, forge names, and make confessions about that, which were and are also their roles with locations, worse things, even killers and body dumping spots that the courts and the police firms have been using, and their sources have been using that. So you have to follow what they were actually recorded abused by when they were kids. And like, for example, with John Maiano, I never saw him before that year. I was in there's a Christine Bedard and a John Maiano who were in a cooking class with me. There's another girl in there also, who John Maiano and the other girl's boyfriend were involved with as a Lombardo, reportedly. But they're the Lombardo families, and these are people involved with medicines racketeering, people with the who work with the car dealerships, all the ways they work with the interbranch that have been used remotely. These are with the military family. There were some military family, police, forging names, switching names roles, drugs and medicines crimes roles, sexual crime roles, per their roles, fact, cheap nature oriented stack, identity thefts and frauds instances roles, falsified police reports roles, Eastern States Narcotics Drug Task Force, involved with some foreign and domestic medical families, on and off Trinity College and on my street, and on and off CCSU through time, involved with the same houses on my street with the same names, and they exploit the phenomenon of how there's a field near my street. So they would have strangers come and make confessions, things like that, as identity thefts and frauds roles, because they need to hide lie progressions per roles with that. Intercities connected through time has things to do with the buildings in downtown Hartford, and a whole bunch of people that Rick C.M. Faglione and others were that were involved with, that had conversations with my English teachers that attached me to fake conversations with themselves, or had that attached, and or they just made those confessions and demonstrations. Was also recorded. They don't understand, but through needs personally, individually grouped together in their family members to hide lie progressions. This is complete possession of each age of the branches of the overt criminal enterprises in collusion with them, and with all exceptions, like where they have, where they tell us, like through our, like 21 Jump Street and things like that, old sitcom, plainclothes police officers. They have their acting coaches that the campuses that teach the other sciences, and they teach the police forms and the courts forms, and they have the uses of words like diversity used to hide all their racketeering with evidence perception racketeering, identity thefts and frauds, falsified police reports, all kinds of rackets of putting fake audio and video more and more into databases on campuses, as the same people putting fake things into court databases, and with the prisons tied to them and their family members, and off the state prison offices, on and off the state judicial branch offices, because this is fact-cheaping oriented, and it's where we are value/value progression. So they use corners to a time where people are going to be, and they make confessions around corners. They make violence around corners. They make positive and negative insidiousness natures, and they make people self-value them, because they, and then when they're going to say, oh, I know that person. Mass identity thefts and frauds. Be careful when you say that. In life, in other words, that makes us divided. So that's not, don't be careful too, but we have to follow mandated law, because I'm the only one who's going to show you this. Because I'm the only one who had to demonstrate it, because I'm the only one, like for example, the news media attached me to fake words with private people, even doctors involved with the drugs and untimely deaths, with the names on my street, as the one involved with the same names, with names intercities on and off the campuses, time coordinated. They didn't coordinate that. It was recorded how it was coordinated. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, had co-defendants who had kids in my schools, and they are involved with inter-campuses and intra-campuses, uses of corners for identity thefts and frauds, uses of sequence shifts, like make one sentence and then a year later or a week later, a month later, add something to it and make it look like, and the whole time, in other words, they're offensive evidence perception racketeering, identity racketeering, individually grouped and together. So please follow mandated law for Connecticut. And this is World Trade Center. This is all private, tied to them. And it's not just one branch's corruption. It's the branches. They have crime methods as one branch, each of the branches, but they also have grouped crime methods. So let's get them onto paper. Let's go. and have them say sorry to Judge Napolitano and anyone who, and get me the name of who disagrees with this. Because when I went to the courts since I was a kid, they would not provide writing, and there was dozens of police reports and they made mistakes with that, and they switched officers' names, put another officer that wasn't even there, different departments even. They're stacking fake things in the databases. No one's going to have time at their job, so they're going to have to rely on expert, criminally foreign influence, up and down. I'll gather round, boxing. I teach you things. So they bring up Sharia law because those people are involved with criminally foreign influence uses of religious locations, interreligious locations too, and the difference of that, and with as people with delusions regarding the psychology and psychiatry and their roles with the law, and remote uses of them and of their cover-ups, distinctly from everyone else, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Also, that being relevant. Forgiveness is for this, not to give up, to permit a quality of fact, cheap nature, to show how everyone is being and having been used remotely. So we're going to set up a humanity with embassies across the world, and we're on the same page and trying to make evolution's fruits and gifts, or we're done with a length of hadiths. It's even self-valued. That's why we're going to space. Boxing. It's not about legitimately because of differences, whatever like that.